And during an explosive week for federal politics, it's time we meet our odd couple, Inverell-based National Senator John Wacker-Williams. Good morning to you, Senator.
Good morning, Kelly. Good morning, everyone.
And also joining us is New South Wales Liberal Democrat Senator David Lynham. Good morning to you, Senator.
Good morning.
Hey, thanks for joining us. So it's been a bit of a week like this. We might be able to characterise it with this song.
Another one bites the dust, and another one gone, and another one gone. Another one bites the dust, hey, hey, gonna get you too. Another one bites the dust.
And I guess officially Stephen Parry is probably the most recently to actual bite the dust, but the Energy Minister Josh Frydenberg has been caught up in this now this morning. His mother, born in Hungary, but was fleeing because of the Holocaust, and could there be a more incredible interpretation of the Constitution if he's affected by this? Senator Lynham, what do you make of this situation that's so affecting the Parliament?
Oh, I think we've lost sight of what the original Section 44(1) was intended to achieve, which was to prevent people from being elected who had dual allegiance. And in the days of when the Constitution was written, in the late 19th century and 1901, when it took effect, I don't think anybody envisaged that being a potential citizen of another country by descent and not even knowing about it was going to be a disqualifying factor in your life. I think we've lost sight of what it's intended for. I think it needs to change.
Wacker, we spoke to you a bit earlier in the week about this, but I mean, Josh Frydenberg's case in particular, is it highlighting I don't want to use the word ridiculous, but is this highlighting the question about this part of the Constitution if he's caught up in it?
Well, Kelly, you could almost use the word ridiculous. I spoke briefly to Josh this morning when his mother came, and now he is, facing questions. David's right. The whole point of this Section 46 is to show allegiance to Australia and Australia only. Where does it end, Kelly? And probably the answer to that is the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Electoral Matters will be doing an inquiry into this and see what comes out of that recommendations. But, Kelly, I asked a question I keep asking in the last 70 years since the Australian citizenship came in after everyone was UK citizen. How many people have sat in Parliament in Canberra because it doesn't relate to state Parliament? How many people have sat in Canberra with dual citizenships? Is the answer to that dozens or hundreds? Who would know?
Stephen Parry's situation seems a little bit different. It seems he was a wait-and-see approach. This is what the Prime Minister had to say.
He chose to delay his, reporting of it. He should have reported it much earlier, and it could have been referred to the High Court together with the other matters.
David, is his question a little bit more? Is his behaviour a little bit more questionable? Do you think he should be treated in a more harsh way?
No, I don't think so. I know Stephen, I like him a lot, and I think he did a perfectly reasonable thing. What he was waiting for was the High Court to rule on the other cases so that he would know whether he had an issue or not. The Solicitor General and the government, on behalf of the government, and in fact most of the other senators and Barnaby Joyce, they all argued that the Section 44(1) should be interpreted as meaning exactly what I said before, dual allegiance. So do you actually have a conflict if you're sitting in the federal parliament that you might have allegiance to another power besides Australia? They argued that the High Court should interpret Section 44 in that way. The High Court, for some reason or other, said, no, it's exactly as it's written and hang the consequences. They were basically disregarded the consequence. And I suppose the argument is, well, now that we've decided that's what it means, it's now up to us as parliamentarians to do something about it.
But I guess in terms of Senator Parry's, behaviour around this, the other politicians either came forward or sort of ratted out by the media. It looks like he sat on this and just crossed his fingers and hoped no one would look at him or turn the attention to him.
Yeah, it wouldn't have made any difference, though. I mean, if he'd sort of outed himself, so to speak, and it had been referred to the High Court, it still could have gone either way. The Solicitor General's argument still may have saved him if the court had accepted that. Alternatively, the view that they took would have said, no, you're disqualified, and he wouldn't have, I don't think he would have resigned in anticipation. He would have waited until the court had made its decision, So it really made no practical difference in the end.
And what's it like watching this? I guess this is, throwing up the question of who replaces him, as people are suggesting Senator Williams do that, in fact, take on that role. There seems to be a fair bit of turmoil, and it's showing some tensions within the coalition. Do you think Senator Williams would sit in that chair well?
I don't know. Wacker's a great character in the Parliament, and he calls out some of the stupidity on the other side of the chamber really nicely. I wonder whether he'd want to give that up. But I mean, I don't know who's going to take the job. I suspect, though, that the Libs will probably have their eye on it. It is a fairly prestigious position, and giving it up for the Nats, I think, might be something that they wouldn't be too happy about.
You seem to have become more interested in the role since we spoke to you on Wednesday about it, Senator Williams. Is it something that you think the Nats could take off the Liberal Party?
It'd be long odds, Kelly, if I was running a book on it. It'd be long odds for me to get the job because Liberals have the numbers in the Senate. I sort of dropped the hint about they may consider perhaps the Nationals doing it for 19, 20 months. I don't think that's resonated very well with my Liberal colleagues, so I think I'll be rough odds to win the spot.
Is it, though, highlighting some growing tensions in the week within the coalition? Barnaby Joyce made it clear that sort of the gloves were off as Liberal Party sniping was sort of criticising the Nationals had fallen foul of this constitutional crisis, and now we're increasingly seeing the Liberal Party in the same situation. Is this sort of now flowing out to give us a sense of how sometimes rough it can be within the coalition?
Not really, Kelly. As far as my name being put forward for President, Lou O'Brien, who replaced Warren Truss up in Queensland, he suggested I do the job, and when I was asked by Lucy Barber from ABC, I said, yeah, I'd give it some consideration. I'd enjoy it. I think I'm very balanced and fair. I mean, when I've been in the Senate in the President's chair as the Deputy Chair, I've only stood once, and when the President stands, there must be silence in the chamber, and that was against my colleague and my good friend Barry O'Sullivan in a threat to him to be quiet. So I certainly don't show any bias, but look, I think it'll be perhaps a bridge too far as getting the job goes.
It seems to be a flow-on conversation, though, suggesting that this is a test of Malcolm Turnbull's leadership, coming from some of people identified in the media as allies of Tony Abbott. Is this a test of Malcolm Turnbull's leadership, David?
I don't see how it can be much of a test of his leadership, as long as we don't talk about, I suppose, fripperies, minor things. He has no control over how the High Court determined or interpreted Section 44. He has no control over who might have a problem under it as it's been interpreted. The issue that may challenge his leadership is if Barnaby doesn't win New England, or if anyone else in the lower house, in the House of Representatives, has a citizenship problem and has to resign and bring on a by-election. That may challenge his leadership if he loses, particularly. But the turmoil in the Senate, at the end of the day, all of the senators who've lost their seats will be replaced under the normal process. The numbers, the balance of power in the Senate won't alter because of that. So I can't see that that's going to affect his leadership. I'm
going to take us to the New England by-election in just a moment. But before we leave this citizenship issue, do you support the calls for an audit? It seems that they're growing. Here's what the Prime Minister said a little bit earlier.
I mean, what is an audit? Does that mean that somebody is going to undertake extensive genealogical research on every member of Parliament and Senator, undertake extensive research into foreign laws? The fact is, every member and every senator has a personal responsibility and obligation to comply with the Constitution.
The Prime Minister speaking on that issue. Senator Linehelm, is it something that it appears Labor's now softening its attitude? There are increasingly Kevin Andrews, other voices in the Liberal Party calling for an audit. Do you think it's necessary?
Well, I think it's wrong in principle. The idea that you should have to prove that you're not a foreign citizen is contrary to the onus of proof argument that underpins our entire legal system. So I suppose my question is similar to Malcolm Turnbull's. What is an audit? If it's up to me to prove something, then I'm not interested. If you think I'm a foreign citizen, then it's up to you to go and prove it. If there's somebody else who's going to do all that investigation rather than me, it's a hell of a job. I mean, it's not just parents, it's grandparents, as we saw in the case of Matt Canavan and Fiona Nash. And their status is relevant, and the laws of other countries are relevant. So we've each got, if we know who our parents are, and not everybody does, so there's orphans to take into account. There are also grandparents on both sides, so there's at least 4 grandparents and 2 parents to be considered, and their genealogy would have to be investigated. Hell of a job, and as I said earlier, I think it's a ridiculous idea anyway, because the clause should be about dual allegiance.
And where do you stand on it now, Senator Williams? Are you supportive of an audit, or is it unnecessary?
Kelly, I think it's time for an audit, and I say that because this is the way I'd do it if I was running the country, and I'm not. Simply put a statutory declaration forward where you were born, where your parents were born, and where your grandparents are born. And then if your parents were born overseas or you did have another citizenship, the documents saying that you renounce that citizenship for running for Parliament, then those who don't put that forward, you'd have, I think, a smaller lot to check out, because this is going to simmer on and just, take up all the oxygen of the whole media space.
It certainly is, yeah.
In doubt.
Okay, well, all right. Would you, interesting to see, is that sort of a National Party point of view at the moment? Or just...
On behalf of the National Party, Kelly, I'm not in any position about it. It's just my opinion. I think it would bring it to an end. And then, as I said, just very simple statutory declaration to the AEC or to the Department of Immigration or whatever. And out of the 226 politicians, you might be left with 15 or 20 to have a close look at, especially those who do not bring their papers forward saying they have renounced their citizenship before they put their name on the ballot paper.
Would you be prepared to accept that, Senator Lynham?
No, I wouldn't cooperate with it. There would have to be some power that forced me to put forward some declaration about my parents or grandparents. I'm not even sure I know what their status was, especially in the case of my grandparents. And are
they born in Australia or are they born overseas as well?
Well, that's the question. I don't know. And I'm not sure that I can be bothered finding out. I don't think it's relevant. I don't think it's important. And as far as I'm aware, there is no legal power to compel a member of Parliament to do that sort of thing.
So are you concerned you might fit into this category as well then, with a question over your ancestry?
No, but what I am saying is that if anybody listening thinks that I'm a citizen of another country, I recommend you go there and stay there and don't come home until you prove it.
Okay. All righty. Can we move on to the New England by-election? We're fast running out of time. We're talking to Senator David Lynham and Senator John Williams. They're our odd couple this week as we look at what's been a fast and furious week in federal politics. We've got plenty to dine out on, haven't we? Senator Lynham, will the Liberal Democrats consider fielding a candidate in this field?
I think it's fairly likely. We haven't finally decided yet. What we've been doing is trying to find a local candidate. And, we're a much smaller party than the Nationals and Liberals and Labor, and so having candidates everywhere is a bit harder for us. But I don't think we're going to come up with someone who's in the electorate, but we've got plenty of candidates outside, and I think we will run.
I mean, the contention is that it'll be one likely Barnaby Joyce result. His primary vote's already 52%. They thought it would. The Nationals, I understand, the polling suggests it would have increased even against Tony Windsor. So why run in a seat where the result is already predetermined?
Yeah, where you can't win. We're used to doing that. We do it a lot. The idea is to give people someone to vote for. The Liberal Democrats are low tax, small government, less red tape, get out of the way and leave people alone party. That's our proposition. We'd like to give people who believe in those sort of values someone to vote for. And as far as we can see, there's nobody else running who sort of falls into that category. That's often the case anyway. So it really is just a matter of giving people someone to vote for that they might agree with for once.
Senator Williams, I mean, considering people are saying this is going to be an easy win for Barnaby Joyce, but with what's happening at a federal level, so much turmoil around the citizenship situation and more people coming into question as every day, is it possible, though, that people might be thinking in the back of their minds, we might have a change of government? Do we want to have a federal member who's in opposition? Could that play out in this campaign?
Well, that may play out, Kelly, but I'd say to that, look who's in government and probably be in government till May 2019 is my pick of the next election, so they're for sure. So for the next 18 months, do you want someone who's not in government or do you want someone who is in government in a very powerful position as Deputy Prime Minister to deliver for your electorate? That's one thing there. But back to running against Barnaby, other candidates and minor parties, Kelly, I think one thing that will steer smaller parties off is that there is no Senate vote. Now, a normal election, you'd have your lower house candidates and a half Senate election. Those smaller parties will go into those seats for a Senate vote as well in cases like David's case. He may run a candidate, but very important to get their Senate vote. Well, there is no Senate vote in this one. I think that's why some of the smaller minor parties are shying off, because they do not have that advantage of grabbing some of the Senate votes as well on this by-election day.
Senator Lyon, I mean, do you think the possibility of a change of government could play out in this by-election with this continual citizenship crisis?
No, I don't think so. There's no chance of Labor winning the New England by-election. I don't think there's nobody else that's going to be able to challenge Barnaby for the result in the end. I mean, all you can hope for really as a minor party is to force it to preferences, but then preferences would get Barnaby over the line irrespective. So no, I can't see this changing the composition of the government or the outcome being in doubt. As I said, we would only run in order to give people somebody to vote for who supports small government and our way of looking at things, and raise our profile. You know, there's still people around who haven't heard of the Liberal Democrats, and it gives them an opportunity to find out.
All right, look, we're going to hit the news in a couple of minutes, and we do like to squeeze in a little bit of a change of pace in this odd couple chat with our pollies on a Friday morning. We ask you to pick a song that represents your political career or life to this point. Senator Lyon, what song have you chosen for us this morning?
I had a real problem with this. A song that reflects me personally would be Fleetwood Mac's "Go Your Own Way," but I chose one for my party, which is "We've Only Just Begun" by the Carpenters.
We've only just begun to live, white lace and promises.